Hello and welcome to the Skydival channel, and today I want to introduce you guys to Spectre version 2, my brand new $500 gaming PC that is the best there is, period. If you want a gaming PC that can play your favorite game at 1080p ultra settings, 60 frames per second, and then, maybe also stream it at 1080p 60 frames per second on Twitch, and then, maybe grab that footage, throw it into Adobe Premiere or Sony Vegas, and render it all in a timely fashion at 4K for about $500, then Spectre version 2 is the PC for you. Which is why I'm really excited to show you guys this gaming PC, because I think it's probably the best budget build I've made on the channel yet. And I mean, even every part that I've chosen inside of this build all serve their purpose. Like, not one part falls out of place. They're all meant to be together. So this PC right here, I truly mean to be the best for you guys, so you can truly find what's the best budget PC you can build for $500, or for that matter, any price point, since that's what my channel is all about. Anyways, today we'll be covering the parts selection inside this PC, as well as the future upgrades possible if you have an extra $50 or $100. We'll also be talking about how to overclock this PC, because you can do that if you want to squeeze some more extra gaming performance out of this PC. And then we'll be looking into benchmarks, which we'll be covering 1080p gaming benchmarks, 1440p gaming benchmarks, and streaming benchmarks. And then we'll be wrapping up everything with a pros and cons section, where I'll be talking about my final thoughts on this computer and if you should truly consider it or not. And spoiler alert, you should consider it. So before we jump into the video, I want to say, if you'd like to learn how to build this PC, I do have a tutorial up on my channel showing you how to build both an AMD and Intel system in many different configurations. And that video pretty much nearly to the tip shows you how to build a PC very similar to this. I mean, it's pretty much the exact same parts, scheme, building scenario, with maybe the exception of a few standoffs in the case, but everything else is very similar, even if the parts are different in that video versus this one. So do watch that video if you want to learn how to build this PC for yourself, so you can get right to gaming on it. So with all that said, let's now have a quick word from our sponsor. So you just built your first gaming PC, and it boots up, it's all running, all ready to go, but you have that annoying activate Windows 10 watermark in the bottom right of your screen, and you have no budget left to fix that and to get that annoying watermark to go away. And if you're in that situation and you need a cheap Windows 10 key, then I recommend heading over to VIPSCDkey.com. They're an online distributor full of totally different keys, ranging from Windows 10 Home to Windows 10 Pro, even to a bunch of PC games that you could find on Steam. And specifically for this build you're about to see, being Spectre version 2, actually activated Windows 10 Pro in a pretty timely fashion using their website and one of their provided keys, which was really awesome because I got it for $13, and like that, I was ready to go. So if you'd like to check out VIP SED Key for your next Windows 10 key, then go ahead and check them out at the top of the description below. So before we get into the parts list, I want to mention that every single part I will be listing in this video can be found below in the description if you want to check out any of the prices of the PC parts I'm about to list if you want to build Spectre version 2 for yourself. So starting with the processor, we have the Ryzen 5 2600. This is a 6-core, 12-threaded processor that is overclockable up to 4.0 gigahertz, and it is a monster for the price. Yeah, it's a 2nd gen, and 3rd gen Ryzen is out, but the value of these older 2nd gen Ryzen processors are just too good to pass up, and you will most certainly see that in the gaming performance of Spectre version 2, and even more so in the streaming performance, because this processor has 6 cores and 12 threads. And those extra cores and extra threads are really going to matter if you want to do any sort of streaming or multimedia editing. Next, for the motherboard, we have the ASRock B450M PRO4F. This is a micro ATX motherboard that's on the budget end, and I've gone with this motherboard before in other budget builds, so I recommend it. It's pretty solid for the price. It's also got a few nifty features like some RGB ports if you want to use a 12-volt header or a 5-volt addressable header. And it's also got 4 SATA ports, so you can fit up to 4 SSDs or 4 hard drives on this motherboard. And also it can be updated to 3rd gen Ryzen in case you wanted to upgrade the processor in this build to like a Ryzen 3600 or a Ryzen 3700X. That's pushing it, but you can upgrade the CPUs on this motherboard with a BIOS update. And for the RAM, I've chosen 2 4GB sticks of Patriot Viper blackout memory running at 3000 megahertz. And for $36, this RAM looks sick. It looks so cool. It fits so well with the motherboard, the case, and the overall kind of aesthetic that I have going with the PC. And best of all, it can run at 3000 megahertz out of the box with its XMP profile, because Ryzen loves high frequency memory, so you can get the highest frame rates possible in your gaming and streaming. Now for the graphics card, I have chosen the XFX RX 570 with 8GB of VRAM. I'll say up to this date, with a brand new graphics card, this is probably the best GPU I've slammed into a PC of this budget. Not only because does it have great gaming performance just in general, but this has 8GB of VRAM, and that's going to make such a huge difference if you want to run games at 1080p that are just, you know, kind of high end and don't take much to run but are really heavy on the graphics memory. This thing with 8 gigs is going to be able to handle so much. And when I mentioned 1440p gaming as well, since this is 8 gigs, this has enough graphics memory to handle high resolution gaming quite easily, as you'll see in the gaming benchmarks depending on the game. It's like the Mazda Miata. It's cheap, it's affordable, it can run really well in races, but everyone's got one because it's really good for the price and it's quite mainstream for that purpose. And for the SSD, I've chosen the PNY 500GB SSD. This is standard, it's got 500 gigs, and meets the quota, which I think is good enough for a $500 gaming PC. And it can fit on the front of the case inside of it, so you can actually see it, which looks really cool with the RAM on the motherboard. So we're going with this one for $48. And for the case, we have the Thermaltake Versa H18 with a tempered glass panel and a mesh front. And the mesh front is what excites me the most, because a lot of you guys have left feedback in my other build videos that have glass fronts, like my deep cool cases. And while those are great for lower end systems with like an APU where there's not a huge necessity to bring in a lot of air into the inside of the PC, with a PC like this, with a 2600 and a 570, I think it'd be smart to have a mesh front where you can still see your RGB fans for the looks, but still actually have an opening so you can bring in fresh air into your PC, which is why I really like the Versa, because it is $50. So it's a budget case that meets all of those requirements that I had, with a mesh front, tempered glass side panel, all in a micro ATX package with a nice look to it. Oh yeah, and it also has a blue LED strip on the side of the front panel, which is kind of cool too. And finally, for the power supply, I chose a Seasonic S12 500. This is a 500 watt bronze power supply, and it does the job, and it's from a reliable brand. So with all those parts added up, I got to a total of $515. But do note, this build is coming out before Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And one of the advantages of going with older parts like the RX 570 and Ryzen 2600 is that they could be discounted. I mean, 3rd gen Ryzen might not get discounted this Black Friday or Cyber Monday, and maybe even the new Navi GPUs or new GTX GPUs won't, but those old RX 570s and Ryzen 2600s are bound to be discounted, which is why I'm really excited to put them in this build, because this build could get even cheaper on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So the price could go down, but again, the price will always change. It'll never stay at $515. Anyways, let's say that you have an extra $50 or $100 and you want to spend a little bit more money to upgrade this PC. What upgrades should you put in? So if you have an extra $50, I would first upgrade the RAM to 16 gigabytes of memory at the same speed. I'd even get the same brand, that Patriot Blackout series, because it looks so cool and it's still pretty affordable. So get 16 gigs on that, and that will be so much better for the longevity of your PC when it comes to applications, gaming, and throwing that all together at once, because the more the RAM, the more processes you can handle. But now let's say you had an extra $100. Well, I would go ahead and keep the RAM upgrade that I just mentioned, but I'd also, if you want more gaming performance, upgrade the RX 570 to an RX 580, or if you want more storage, upgrade to a 1TB SSD. And if you want my personal opinion, I would go with the storage upgrade because I just finished downloading Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and that game takes up 116 gigabytes of memory, and that's like a fourth of the SSD already in the system. So if you were me, I would go ahead and just get that RAM upgrade and SSD upgrade for an extra $100. So you want to overclock Spectre version 2. Well, guess what? It's really easy and really simple if you want to squeeze even more gaming performance out of this PC without really pushing it too much. So if you want to overclock the graphics card, go into your Radeon settings and go to Wattmin and increase the core clock speed by about 8.5% with that slider. I found going above 8.5% is just too much, and it kind of leaves the system a bit too unstable, so keep that at 8.5% and you will see noticeable gains. And then for the RAM, go into the BIOS and change the XMP profile to the selected one, which should be the 3000 MHz profile. That'll jump your RAM from 2400 MHz to 3000, which is going to mean more performance. That's actually kind of the easiest thing to do on this system, actually. I just leave that on at all times. And then to overclock the CPU, right above it, go ahead and change the CPU multiplier to 4000 and change the voltage to 1.31 volts. And that's been a pretty good setting I found for the Ryzen 2600 to increase it to 4000 megahertz and 1.3 volts while not completely pushing the system too much because it does have the stock cooler. And with all of that being said, let's now go ahead and get right into the benchmarks, which there's not much to say aside from that I actually kept everything at stock, so I didn't overclock anything, but I did keep the RAM at 3000 megahertz with its onboard XMP profile, which is really easy to do. It really doesn't push your system that much further, so it's something all you guys can do. I just go ahead and leave that RAM at 3000 megahertz. There's not much to it. But aside from that, where we're going to be covering 1080p, 1440p, overclocked, and streaming benchmarks, so you can see all the different metrics possible with this PC, so I can give you guys the best idea of how well Spectre version 2 performs. And with that being said, let's get right into the benchmarks. So now we've made it to the end of the build guide, and now you may be thinking, should I get Spectre version 2? Well, if you weren't already convinced with the really awesome gaming performance that this PC offers, I'll go ahead and provide a few little personal dialects with my experience with Spectre version 2. So when it comes to the cons, the only one I had was that I had to put in 2 extra standoffs in the thermal take case to fit the ASRock Pro4F motherboard, and that's it. I mean, gaming performance is there, streaming performance is there. You can even do 1440p to an extent, but I mean, it is a $500 system, so it can't do everything. Well, actually, it kind of can. And they can even edit it because of that Ryzen 2600. So when it comes to cons, I really can't think of anything major aside from just building it and enjoying it afterwards. And of course, when it comes to the pros, this thing can do pretty much everything. And just like I said, it can do 1080p, 1440p, streaming at 1080p, editing, overclock gaming performance, and can do all of that for $500. And I really think that the CPU choice, keeping that Ryzen 2600, has probably made the biggest difference, because those extra 2 cores and extra 4 threads compared to, say, like a Ryzen 2200G or 3200G, it made such a huge difference in streaming and future editing performance. So I really think that everything chosen inside this PC has really mattered and all counted. So for $515, I really think you're getting a super tight package. Like, everything works pretty well. Like, I need that meme that says, oh yeah, it's all coming together, because that's this PC right here. It's that good. Anyways, that is it for the PC build video today. And if you enjoy these types of videos, as well as just general budget tech videos, then do subscribe to the Scatterbolt channel. We make weekly videos, which is all about tech and PC gaming and hardware stuff, which is really cool, and it's done by me. So if you like that, then click that subscribe button. And if you want to follow me on my other social medias like Twitter, Discord, and Instagram, so that you don't miss my videos, because YouTube notifications are pretty funky, as you guys have told me, go ahead and follow me on those other social medias. I will always post video updates on those, so do follow me on those. Anyways, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the Scatterbolt channel, signing out.